All right, let's dive into one of the greatest historical cold cases of all time, the fall of Jericho. You've got a story of faith, a dramatic conquest, and a major, high-stakes clash between an ancient text and what archaeologists are actually finding in the ground. So let's get into it. You know the story, right? It's one of the most incredible scenes in the whole Bible. You have the sound of trumpets, a massive shout from the Israelites, and then the supposedly impenetrable walls of Jericho just crumble. An impossible victory, won in this totally miraculous way. But what happens when we shift from the ancient text to the dusty reality of an archaeological dig? This is where our investigation really begins, pitting the testimony of the Bible against the hard evidence pulled from the earth.
Okay, so first, let's get the story straight from our main source, the book of Joshua. The Israelites have just crossed the Jordan River, they're in the Promised Land, and smack in front of them is Jericho, their first and biggest obstacle.
The thing is, the battle plan had nothing to do with fighting. I mean, no siege engines, no scaling ladders. The instructions from God were, let's be honest, pretty bizarre from a military point of view. But that was the whole point. It was meant to show that this victory wasn't theirs. It was a gift, a sign that God was giving them the land.
Now, to really understand what happened after the walls came down, we need to wrap our heads around this really crucial and kind of complicated Hebrew concept called harem. This idea is absolutely central to what went down at Jericho and the whole conquest that follows.
So at its core, harem means to set something totally apart, to devote it completely to God. And this could happen in a couple of ways. For people and animals, it meant total destruction. But for valuable stuff, silver and gold, it meant putting it right into the Lord's treasury. The key was, nothing was for personal profit. And this shows you just how tricky translation can be. Is harem devoted, or is it accursed? Well, the answer is kind of both. Scholars point out that since Jericho was the first fruits, the very first city conquered, everything in it belonged entirely to God. So the city was devoted, which in this specific case meant it had to be destroyed. All right, so we've heard the testimony from the book. Now let's turn to the physical evidence at the crime scene, the ancient mound of Jericho, and meet the archaeological detectives who've been on this case for more than 100 years. So this investigation has had a few major players. It kicked off with German excavators way back in the early 1900s. Then, an Englishman named John Garstang took over in the 30s. And then famously, Kathleen Kenyon came in during the 1950s and brought all these modern scientific methods to the dig.
And this is where the mystery really gets going. Garstang digs up a destroyed city and dates its fall to around 1400 BC, a perfect match for the biblical story. But then, Kathleen Kenyon re-examines everything and says, nope, this city was destroyed way earlier, around 1580 BC. Which would mean there was no great city for Joshua to even conquer. Case closed? Not so fast. More recently, another archaeologist, Bryant Wood, went back and looked at Kenyon's own notes. He argued that she totally misread the pottery evidence, which is like a timestamp for archaeologists, and that Garstang's original date of 1400 BC was right all along.
And don't for a second think this is some quiet, polite academic disagreement. Oh no, this debate gets heated. Critics throw around phrases like this, basically accusing scholars who find links to the Bible of just being biased. The stakes here are incredibly high for everyone involved.
Okay, let's pivot now to our second crime scene, because after that amazing victory at Jericho, the story takes a really surprising twist at the very next city, a place called Exile, and it shows us just how seriously that harem rule was taken. So thinking AI is going to be an easy win, Joshua sends in just a small group of soldiers, and they get completely routed. The whole nation is terrified. So what happened? The text is very clear. Someone broke the harem rule. A man named Achan had secretly snagged some of the forbidden loot from Jericho for himself, a fancy robe, some silver, and gold. That one selfish act was enough to lead to a national disaster. It was only after Achan's sin was dealt with that the Israelites were finally able to conquer Ai. And just like Jericho, it was totally wiped out, burned to the ground, and turned into a permanent heap of ruins. It became a memorial, really, to the consequences of their actions. So, the biblical story is crystal clear. Ai was a fortified city that the Israelites conquered and burned. Okay, time to bring our archaeological detectives back on the scene. What do they find when they started digging?
For decades, the prime suspect for the location of A was this mound called Et Tel.
Excavations started there back in the 1930s, and, everyone was expecting to find the ruins of a fortress from Joshua's time.
But what they found was a complete bombshell. Tel was a city in ruins, for sure, but it had been destroyed around 2200 BC. It was completely abandoned and uninhabited when Joshua and the Israelites would have shown up almost 1,000 years later. This was a massive problem.
So how do you solve a mystery like that? A bunch of different theories started popping up. Some thought maybe the story of A got mixed up with the story of conquering nearby Bethel. Others suggested maybe A wasn't a big city at all, just a small military fort that wouldn't leave much of a trace. But the theory that really started to gain traction was pretty simple. What if they were just digging in the wrong spot?
And this is where our cold case suddenly heats right back up, because this investigation is far from over. In fact, new leads and totally new ways of thinking have pointed our detectives in a completely new direction.
Scholars like David Livingston went back to the maps, arguing that the traditional sites for both A and Bethel were wrong. Following that new lead, our guy Bryant Wood, the same archaeologist from the Jericho debate, started digging at a totally different site, a place called Khirbet el-Makatir. And guess what he found? A fortress city destroyed in the late Bronze Age, a perfect match for the exact time frame of Joshua.
And all of this brings us to this really important principle in archaeology, something K.A. Kitchen famously said: absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because you don't find what you're looking for in one place doesn't automatically mean a historical story is false. It could just mean you're looking in the wrong place.
So the stories of Jericho and Ai really show us that the relationship between ancient texts and archaeology is messy, it's full of passionate debates, exciting new discoveries, and constantly shifting ideas. And it leaves us with this big question. When the text and the trowels don't seem to line up, what does that really teach us about how we piece together the past and about the search for truth itself?